Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another video and another special guest, Mr. Ahsan Naeem. I had to get Ahsan on. We had to because I don't know if you've been paying attention to the world of Manchester City, but it's been rather chaotic of late. It really has. Like the stable, steady Manchester City ship has been rocking. It really has, and that's not something that I usually associate with Manchester City Football Club for many reasons. Be it Guardiola calling the players out for the passion, the hunger, the results not being great, while still being in second place for what it's worth. But then Cancelo kicking off and going on loan and so on. It's been chaotic, I would say, which is uncharacteristic. Not as chaotic as some other places, but still a little bit less steady than usual. So this guy alongside me is a good man to chat about it. Ahsan, of course, by the way, is from the 9320 podcast. If you don't know what that is, what are you waiting for? Ahsan, do you want to tell a few words about 9320?
It's a podcast about Man City and it's dead good, so you should go and listen to it.
It is fucking dead good.
That's about as good as you're going to get out of me.
If you enjoy the chats with me and Ahsan on here, you'll love 9320, basically. Everyone over there is forthright, smart, intelligent, and they don't pull any punches. Not in a negative way, just in an honest way, and it's mature discussion. So the link in the description right now. Go and check out the 9320 player because it's fantastic. I would recommend it. Do it, guys. And I'll put a link in the comments as well. Ahsan, while I put a link in the comments, I'm going to let you jump into whatever's going on. The Cancelo aftermath, I'll call it. What was your general vibe of this whole Cancelo furore? Because it's been chaotic.
Actually, it started for me before the Arsenal game, in that I'd said in our preview on the 9320 pod that I felt that if Guardiola picked the same team more or less again for Arsenal, and actually the wider point was if he leaves Walker, Cancelo, Bernardo, Ruben Diaz, João Cancelo on the bench again, it wouldn't shock me if over the weekend somebody demands to leave and City end up letting the player go. And even when I said it on the pod, I think the general response was, nah, that's not going to happen. But I think that when you stick the types of players that I've just listed there, when you put those players on the bench and you start picking lads like Rico Lewis and you're playing, for example, Ake at left back, where he's a centre back who's been converted to left back, and you've got two natural fullbacks left on the bench. I think it was hard to imagine that there wouldn't be a reaction at some point from at least one of those players. And it sounds like, and actually, you know what? It sounds like Cancelo's been acting the fool for a minute now. I don't think that this began right before Arsenal. From everything that I've read, the stuff that Sam wrote, that Jack wrote, you know, it sounds very much like Cancelo's been acting like a little bit of a dick for a couple of weeks now.
As I put it on the video yesterday, just a little bitch. And he sounds like he's just a bit of a little bitch. I mean, doesn't mean he's a bad person as such, but I just think he's a mad ass when things aren't going right. And I think he's just, go on, carry on.
I think that generally, I imagine a lot of footballers are mad asses, right? Because they live in a bubble and they, you know, all of their whims are catered to and people don't really say no to them. I think with Cancelo, he's a bit extra. I don't think that City let a guy who arguably was the best left back in the league a year ago, I don't think they let him go to Bayern Munich on loan unless what he's done behind the scenes is so egregious that the club go, actually, he'll never have a future here regardless, so just get him out the door. And it's a shame that he's that kind of character, because it does a little bit leave City in a difficult situation, or potentially a difficult situation. But at the same time, I don't care is the honest answer.
No,
if somebody acts like that, they know where the door is, they can go.
No, you're right. Absolutely right. I mean, you have to do stuff like this, unfortunately, and people. The main issue I think people have with this about Cancelo leaving is more the lack of a replacement, which I get. But ultimately, the decision about Cancelo leaving, and we don't know fully, none of us do know. So all we can do is just trust the decision, if that makes sense. But if he's been as bad as what we've heard is true, then he sort of has to go. Really, you know, great managers do this. I mean, we can talk about why is Pep doing this, but the guy across the road, Ferguson, did it for years. He got rid of Stam, Keane, Beckham. You know, as soon as they started to descent, you basically your authority can't be challenged as a manager. And if you've been a little bitch and constantly moaning, and it's potentially spreading to other players, and we've heard reports of a bust up on the actual training pitch, and It's just too much, and he's such an important player. He's such a big player for Manchester City, and he has a presence. He's Joao Cancelo. He's a Premier League Team of the Year fullback. You know, he's a superstar. And he's got a number 7 shirt now, which probably doesn't help his ego a little bit. But anyway, in general, if you're that big, you know, you can affect the rest of the team, can't you? You can, and I think we sometimes people forget that, you know, this is real life. This isn't Football Manager or FIFA. You know, these are people, and these do impact the dressing room, and they do talk to their mates, don't they? And they do have a negative effect on those around them. And Cancelo, I'm sure, talks to Ruben Diaz, Bernardo, and we know Bernardo wants to go. So what's to say he's made Bernardo more? Look at that. Look at Bernardo, by the way, moaning a bit more about a month ago. Could that be a coincidence? You know, it could be that negativity, and we already know Bernardo was in a good place. It could make it even worse, you know. Like, so there's so many potential side effects from this. I'm like, well, yeah, that could now be the Cancelo culture, you know. So yeah.
I think what we've done is we've held on to players too long. I think that the club didn't really heed Guardiola's warnings. Pep, that interview was doing the rounds that he did with Rio Ferdinand, where he asks him, Rio, was when you won how many Premier League titles did you win? And Ferdinand says, I won 6. And Guardiola's like, did you have the same players for the 6th title as you did the first? And he's like, no. And Pep's like, yeah, exactly. You have to shake and you have to move. And I think that one of the things that we have always done, I've said this for a while now, is we've held on to players a little bit too long.
Yeah.
You can't be, so you approach this one of two ways, right? You either do it a little bit like Liverpool have done it, where you get the sense with Liverpool that they're a bit emotional about these things, right? That it's that squad is their squad and they're Klopp's boys, and you know their legs are going to fall off on the pitch basically, but they're not going to replace them because you know I've got Millie and I've got Henderson and you know these guys, they've been there forever and they're my guys.
Hendo and Millie.
But yeah, Hendo. But I think you got to be ruthless. I think you have to be really fucking ruthless. Can I swear like that?
I don't give a shit, man.
I just
you say this every time, and I don't care.
I think you have to be really ruthless, and dealing with Cancelo in the way that they've dealt with him is actually not that ruthless because the guy literally acted like a clown, allegedly tried to start a fight with the manager, allegedly tried to injure players in training. I mean, you know, there's not much else he could do to get himself transferred. Yeah. Suggests to me he's trying a bit hard to hold on to players. I think that, you know, in the medium term, you've got to look at some of these situations, whether it be Bernardo Silva or it be Gundo or it be Laporte, or in fact, I'm not even going to name any more names. I'm just going to say any guy who is a bit like, I don't know if I want to be at Man City. I think that the club this summer should facilitate an exit for them, because I just don't think that you're going to get, if you look at what this team did over the last 5 or 6 years, if you want to repeat that trick again, you're going to need guys that are that hungry to do it again. And right now, there's not enough of them. We're getting there slowly. We're getting there. If you look at the movements, there has been a sort of a refreshing. I think it began last summer with the players that go and the players that come in, but we'll have to do the same again this summer. We'll have to let 3 go and bring 3 in minimum.
It's funny, isn't
and that's not including Joao Cancelo. I think if you include Cancelo, I think you've got to let 4 go and bring 4 in.
I think you're absolutely right. It's funny though because 2 of the players that probably left last summer, in particular, you know, Zinchenko and Jesus never really acted like they were unhappy, which is funny. Like, so I think they would have been absolutely fine if they were still here mentally, you know. So you're absolutely right, by the way. You're absolutely right in general. I think it's just funny.
No, but
like Bernardo and
Steve,
Cancelo moaned a bit more.
Don't you think for example, with Zinchenko and Jesus, don't you think that as much as they were nice guys and they never caused a problem in training, it's not really good for squad morale if a guy just never plays, right? And it's not really good if you've got too many players in the squad who the manager clearly doesn't trust.
No, I agree.
And I think that's more my point, is more that, you know, a bad face is the final straw in a way. Once your face is bad, you're out the door.
Oh, no,
but the
I
point
agree, by the way.
Before the bad faces, the manager should go, I don't rate him, get him out the door. I'm not sure about his attitude, get him out the door, and work like that.
I guess my slight clumsy point was more was if we were going to lose some now and some then next week, I wish it was the ones who were less likely to moan, And we see like publicly Bernardo and Cancelo coming out a lot more. A couple of super chats, by the way. Let me get to him. Condinho Abdallah says Cheeky's been neglecting the left back situation for 5 years. I'm sure we all pretty much know that the truth, mate, and I'm sure that will something that we have to approach now. We have to. It's true. It is 5 years. He also said Cancelo going was right and not replacing was wrong. I think that's pretty much the general vibe among City fans. So I'll get your opinion on that in a minute, Ahsan. He also said with the third one, said one Ake injury away from trouble when Sergio Gomez is rubbish bin emoji, which I'm sure everyone can translate that one. Mark also said Cancelo blocked me on Instagram. Good riddance. Mark, he blocked you personally, Mark. That's wild. I'm not sure what you tweeted at him or what you shared, Mark, but Cancelo was blocking lots of content creators yesterday on Instagram. Which is crazy because I've not really seen anyone digging him out, like aggressively or anything like that. But that's petty, is what I would say. And Mehmet saying the end of Cancelo culture, indeed. Lots of points to unpack there. Yes, what do you make of the lack of, I guess, of incomings then? Because obviously Cancelo going, it just had to happen if it's as bad as it is. Because sometimes what's it called? Subtraction can be admission, can't it? Like subtraction can improve a squad. Like you can take a player out and weirdly be in a better place, even though they've got loads of quality, because the general mood can be better and everyone can be more focused. What do you make of the lack of a replacement, though? Where are you at with that?
I said on our podcast yesterday or the day before that even if Cancelo had gone on the 1st of January, I don't think that we'd have signed a replacement. I've kind of changed my mind on that. I suspect that if he'd have gone on the 1st of Jan, they probably would have ended up doing something. Look, how do I feel about it? I don't know. I'll tell you at the end of the season. Depends on what we win. Depends on what happens between now and the end of the season. He had to go. I don't buy the idea that City are naive or that they don't know what they're doing. Stefan said something. I read something Stefan said on Twitter this morning, and I really agree with it. City's problem is probably that they're too unemotional. That City deal with everything in a hugely practical fashion. And I think that whilst we all go, oh my God, if Nathan Ake gets an injury, what are we going to do? I think City will kind of take the wider view of, well, Pep, what do you think? These are the options. We might be able to get this guy. He might do it. Do you know what I mean? Like if there was a standout candidate, I think it'd be a different conversation. But the reality is that I like Anthony Robinson. They might think he's a bit meh. People who have looked at his underlying numbers say that he's not that good. As soon as you look outside of the Premier League, well, how do you know that next man from League One is going to have any impact if he signs? So I'm okay to some extent with the fact that it'll have to go to the summer. But I would say that they have to sign an orthodox left back in the summer.
Have to.
I just think with everything that's happened to Benjamin Mendy and the fact that you've let Zinchenko go and now Cancelo's go, you might have to buy two, but you certainly have to buy one.
No, there's absolutely no doubt whatsoever. I mean, left back's been, it's been the runt of the transfer litter for a long time. We've been ignoring it constantly, and just sort of getting by. And this sort of touches on something I'll bring up in a bit when I'm going to talk about Maddison. But my general feeling about left back is that Guardiola's been a victim of his own success there, his own brilliance in terms of because he's gotten away with being such a fucking incredible coach that left back anyone's played there. Fabian fucking Delph, Zinchenko, who was at one point a failed loanee at PSV. Was it Feyenoord? Yeah, PSV wasn't it? He went on loan, didn't get anywhere. We couldn't shift him out again, and eventually because he was there, this attacking midfielder ended up playing left back and did well there. Then Cancelo was bought as a right back and did well there. And Ake was a centre back and now has done all right there. But this is not because they're all great left backs. It's more because, in my opinion, it's been a position on the pitch that we've sort of got away with not needing. But now I think it's really obvious that we can't just keep doing this. Like eventually Guardiola, he needs to be given the square pegs for square holes, and he's been botching it. But I think that we're more focused on it now because the squad looks smaller. It does look a bit smaller. It looks like it more needs to refresh, and maybe we haven't got the midfield, or maybe the whole balance perfectly right at the moment. That you're more drawn to where the weaknesses are, and right now, all of a sudden, that weakness that we covered up really well with brilliance everywhere else, all of a sudden looks a little bit more vulnerable, and we've lost the numbers as well. So it's all of a sudden gone from we can get away with it because the squad was brilliant, to now the squad needs a refresh. We really can't get away with it anymore. And that's where it's gone to me. And it's just absolutely essential. left back now it has to be very much give him every fucking tool that he needs, every profile that he needs, all the players that he needs that can do what he wants, and then see what Guardiola can do. Because if he doesn't, I think we're at the risk of making him, pissing Guardiola off eventually. Like, he needs fucking left backs, like he needs, not a guy, with all due respect to Gomez, not a guy who was meant to go on loan to Girona, and then we've loaned out Wilson as.
But Pep does have a hand in this, Steve. I think that we should be cognizant of the fact that Guardiola does run the club in many respects.
Which is true.
And if he really wanted a left back, if he walked into Big Stein's office and said, "Bring me a left back," they'd have a left back at the CFI by the end of the afternoon. There's just I don't think for one moment that Pep's gone, "I need a left back," and they've gone, "Sorry, mate, we haven't got any." I think that it's more a case that they sit in a room, they give him some options, and he goes, "You know what? We'll deal with it in the summer." I think there's one thing I've been thinking about, which I think is worth bearing in mind.
Go on.
So Cancelo leaving is a little bit like, you ever been to a house party and there's one guy there and he's a knobhead, right? And he's ruining the vibe for everybody. And everybody's sat trying to have a good time. And there's one fella there who's he's just being a dick and it's just ruining it for everybody. And then that fella gets booted out. And 10 minutes later, the party's on again.
Everyone's like,
I wonder whether,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, I wonder whether Pep's looked at the dressing room and the way it's been in the last few weeks. He looks at Cancelo leaving and he goes, "You know what? Just Cancelo leaving is going to give them a lift. Everybody's going to be a lot happier." Maybe it's not smart right now to add an other personality in from the outside who nobody knows, who might be a great guy, but might not be a great guy. It might take time to adapt. And, you can, in a way, Guardiola has the opportunity to learn a lot more about Ake and about Rico Lewis in particular between now and the end of the season, which will help him to make a more informed decision in the summer about what players he needs for what positions.
No, I think you're right. Maybe a little bit of separation, and distance from the idea of Cancelo and the left back in general. Maybe it is good. Maybe we just have to get through and just go for it to the summer. And I do agree in general. Anyone we sign now would be kind of a risk. I did a video where I outlined a couple of potentially backup options, and they were all very short term. And I do think there was some merit in the idea of something like Guerrero from Dortmund, who was on a trade for like 10-12 million in the way that Kanji was. And he's a captain, he's literally captain today. So you sign a captain, you've got relative minimal risk of someone being an absolute arse, especially given his age. I think there might have been something in that, and I kind of wish that he had been a little bit more more emotional, as you said, more reactive, more like, no, we have to fucking get it. And I wish there was a bit of that in it. And I do think we could have maybe forced a loan somewhere, 5 million loan fee, just to give the numbers, because I think sometimes there's something to be said for numbers. I know that sounds really obvious, but like, just a season like Manchester City's can run away when you just run out of players, and like not every player has to be a superstar sometimes, and sometimes you can have short-term fixes, and I do think City are a little bit allergic to that. I think
I agree.
I think totally. We are, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think the great sides do actually do that every now and then. They will dip into a market. Look, I hate to talk about United, but they got fucking Henrik Larsson on loan, and things like that can be very useful sometimes. They
lost Ericsson. They brought Sabitzer in the last 24 hours.
It's sensible and smart. It is, unfortunately. I do think City, I'm not going to tell them how to suck eggs, because they know what they're doing and they're very experienced, and ultimately I think they'll get it right. But I do think there is a merit to a fresh face, the right fresh face, on loan, a short-term boost. And especially, I imagine it was the Guerrero guy from Dortmund, and he's got a half a year left on his contract, and City went, you know what, we're not going to sign him, but we'll pay you 5 million, 4 million, whatever, for a loan for 6 months. This guy then comes in, he's 29 years old, he's experienced, he's not expecting to be the superstar signing, but he'll go, you know what, I want to play for Man City, actually, so I'm going to play my arse off for 6 months. We'll probably agree a fee of 15 million, which is absolutely peanuts for Man City, and bringing experience, it's relatively risk-free. If he doesn't play, and then there's something like that, I think in general there's a merit to that idea of just hedging your bets a little bit, because with Man City, we can afford to. Ultimately, we can afford to, and we know the net spend and all that kind of stuff. And maybe I'm being childish. Maybe it just grates a little bit when you watch Chelsea just go, bam.
You're really not. And I think actually, I would argue that 99% of the other football managers in the world would use the Cancelo situation to go back into the market without question. But I think Guardiola is so idiosyncratic that you have to take what we perceive to be frustrations or the things that we find annoying. You kind of have to take that, because that's part and parcel of what makes Pep Pep.
Yeah.
And also it's part and parcel of what makes the club the club. You know, whilst we watch Chelsea do what they're doing, we know that we've never operated in that fashion, ever. Yeah. Doesn't matter what people say or write on the outside. The reality the most money that we've ever spent in a window is, I think, 2017, right?
Yeah.
And in 2017, if you look at the list of players that leave, it's more or less 7 first-team players up until that point. I think 3 fullbacks leave at the same time. So the only time that City have gone out and have bought a volume of players for a lot of money, it's because they've let a volume of players go. Yeah. And you need 25 players for a squad, so you got to buy players. You may as well buy good ones. We've never been the kind of... We've never front-loaded something.
I'm looking now, by the way. Here's the players that left. Joe Hart, Nolito, Caballero, Clichy, Zavaleta, Nasri, Denaya, Boney, Mangala, Fernando, Kolarov. No, Kolarov did as well. And I guess Sanya did, didn't he? It was he the year before. Angus Gunn, Iheanacho. A lot of players went. You know, a lot of players who played first-team football.
Exactly. So... I think my point is that we're running a way that we all really like 99% of the time. So the 1% of the time where maybe we don't like it, we probably need to just suck it up and not worry too much. And I know that, like, you know, I guess there's a difference for me. I'm older. I'm a bit more pragmatic. So I'm okay with sacrificing a bit of short-term risk for medium to long-term gain.
Yeah.
If there isn't a left back there right now, and you don't want to sign one, even if Guardiola's going, even if there is a left back, I don't want him because I want 6 months to see what Rico Lewis can do and what Nathan Ake can do. Maybe in 6 months, I'm not going to need the profile of left back that I think I need now.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. You can't win it every year, right? You can't win the Premier League every year. We won't win it every year between now and when Guardiola leaves. As much as we'd love that, there'll be years where we won't win it. So, and this, to me, this season more than any other season since Pep's first season, feels like a season of transition. Feels like we're learning how to do something new. We're about to let a bunch of players go. We've let a bunch of players go. Where the team is evolving and changing. And so if that means that this is a season of finishing second and winning the Champions League, well, I'll take finishing second and winning the Champions League.
Big caveat there. I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if he did that. I honestly wouldn't. It feels like this weird kind of year. And to be honest, like, I think what we probably need to... I'm not trying to downplay expectations here, but I still think we will probably win the FA Cup or something like that. And I think that is... Like, I grew up, obviously, I'm a bit older like you, compared to some people watching this video. Look, if we City win a trophy, any year is a good year for me. I know that sounds really basic, and it just is. You know, it is. And I think we probably could win the FA Cup. And like, as long as we don't have a catastrophic end of season running, I think we'll still challenge Arsenal.
Do you think we can beat Arsenal? Do you think we can beat Arsenal at the Emirates?
Yeah, I do.
Right. So for me,
I think we can. That's crazy.
That's the only game that matters to me right now. Obviously, you've got Spurs and you've got who do we play after Spurs before Arsenal? We've got one more game in the middle.
Do you know what? My head's gone. Let's have a look. We play
Villa.
Yeah.
Do I want to say Villa?
Yeah, Villa.
Villa. Fine. Yeah. So. 2 very difficult games, Spurs and Villa. But if you get through those 2 games, that gives you the confidence to then go to the Emirates feeling like you can beat them. If you beat them at the Emirates, it's on like Donkey Kong because you've got momentum then. Then you've got, you know, you will have won Spurs onwards. You will have won everything, all the games up until the Arsenal game.
Imagine this as well, by the way. Imagine this happens and Cancelo is gone. Imagine the power that gives Guardiola, by the way. Imagine the feeling around the dressing room. So imagine, like, I got rid of him and you guys have just fucking won these games. We don't need him. We are a unit. Imagine the feeling of, I don't know, cohesion and also the backs against the wall.
I heard, I don't know if this is true or not, so I'm just going to stick allegedly at the front of this. But I heard that Cancelo fought with Foden. I read that.
I read that on a forum.
A lot of what's going on... I know it was on a forum, but I read it somewhere else as well.
I hope it's true. I really want that to be true because I want Foden. If that is true about Foden, I'd fucking love it. Like, I don't know why, like, because that would be just go on, Phil. You know, it'd be great.
The story is, again, we'll say allegedly. The story is that João Cancelo launched a football at Guardiola, and he's lucky that rather than hitting Guardiola in the head, it hit him in the stomach, and that Foden and Ruben Diaz then went for João Cancelo. Allegedly. But I've also allegedly heard that before that, Foden and Cancelo fought because basically Cancelo was throwing in proper bad challenges,
like sulky
in
challenges
training.
You know, like a bit sulky and a bit late and a bit like kind of thing.
Well, the kind of challenges that you throw in when you want to get sold. Like, there's no question in my mind that João Cancelo has gone, I don't want to play here anymore, Mendes. And Mendes has gone, well, it's Man City. They're not just going to give you away. You're going to have to do something that forces them to sell you. And then allegedly, or potentially, he's gone, right, I'll just throw some challenges in, and then they'll realize that they can't have me in training and they'll let me go. But again, going back to Phil, my point is that I wonder whether there's a reaction from the whole squad, including the players who previously we thought were a bit down on their form or look or whatever. I mean, I said after the what game was it? What was the last game that Foden and Cancelo started? United Old Trafford? Old Trafford? Yeah. Somebody in the chat tell me, is that right? United Old Trafford?
Last game that they started together, I mean, it could have been actually...
Anyway, so if I remember correctly of that game, and I remember it, at half-time, I was absolutely cussing João Cancelo. I was giving him so much. And the reason was because I was going, why has João Cancelo, as a left-back, not passed the ball to the attacker in front of him once? Why is Phil Foden being made to basically do shuttle runs up and down the wing to create space for João Cancelo? Like, Cancelo, as good as he is.
It does drive me mad. Like, I can't prove it, but I feel like one of Foden's biggest problems this year is that he's been fucking ignored. Like, I do genuinely believe, like, one of his biggest problems is that people just sort of ignore him, and like, he's not. It's like everyone's talking about he's not doing this and that because he's not getting as much touches as he used to.
He's not getting the football.
He's not getting the football, and like, he's just not involved. And it feels like everything, understandably, is going down the right a little bit, or if it's going down the left, it's with all due respect to Ake, like he's not a creative passer. He's not going to get the he's not going to give the ball to Foden in a position where he can actually do anything with it because it's just he's not that kind of player. He's not progressive that way. And Cancelo. This is not revisionism. It is true. Like, Foden was being ignored a lot with the ball, and he's like, the amount of times he was waiting for the pass, it never came.
Was I right about that game?
I don't know.
Was it Old Trafford?
Let me have a look. I mean, I can quickly go back and have a quick.
I was nobody in the chat not answered this question. I'm doing it now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll check as well. Roughly, I'm just going through the lineup randomly, but there's a lot of. Maybe was it Southampton? It could be Southampton as well, the 4-0. That was before, wasn't it? That was after. Yeah, that was after. We played, they played together in the league afterwards, definitely. I'm
right. It's the Old Trafford game I'm talking about, that left-hand side. It was Foden, Bernardo Silva and João Cancelo down that the one in side. Old Trafford, mate.
Oh, sorry.
The game that we lost. The game that we lost a few weeks ago. So Cancelo started on the left, and I don't think he passed the ball to Phil once in that first half. It was appalling, and it felt like Phil was just doing shuttle runs up and down the wing, whilst Cancelo was just
to what allegedly happened.
Well, all I'm saying is that it wouldn't surprise me if there was tension between those two players, because I watched that game as an observer and went, why does Cancelo keep doing that? He just keeps dribbling with the ball right up to their backline, completely ignoring Foden, who's just sort of stood there going, give me the ball. So, yeah.
Fingers crossed Phil gets back to his best, because we need it. I mean, like, it's going to be a weird few moments. But, going back to the Arsenal thing, like, it's strange, given everything. I think, to be honest, I think you'd be an idiot, in my opinion, to not think it's possible that City could be Arsenal. I think genuinely, I'm not saying we will do, but if the idea that there's no chance that City.
Imagine writing the City team.
Well, it's just
imagine wriing the City team off.
I'm not saying they would be wrong to say that City won't win, but it's just not possible to fully rule them out because of Manchester City. City could be Arsenal by. It could be fucking horrible. It could be a minging game. It could be there where City just keep the ball and eventually a scruffy Haaland goal, and we just frustrate the life out of him. Because the one thing I noticed about that game the other day against Arsenal was that, even though obviously it was their weakened team and so on, I felt like there was a real notable boost of energy when the big guns came on for Arsenal, and it really took because all of a sudden they looked like, oh yeah, we're fucking good here. 10 minutes later, they look frustrated because Manchester City are probably the only team in world football that can actually keep the ball better than them, and they were like, "This is quite difficult." And obviously, they didn't have time to get into the rhythm. And I'm sure they would have found rhythm and there's all the caveats and so on. But City can keep the ball better than Arsenal. Still, as much as they're the young pretenders, we're still rocky, and they're still fucking. We are still the fucking experienced champions here, and like. We could frustrate the life out of them, and we know we can step up in a big game, and we'd have to play brilliantly. We just have to play frustratingly, and we have to just fucking like.
But
go on.
and on top of that, listen. So with the thing with the Arsenal thing is that again, like maybe people say I'm a happy clapper, but I watched that cup game and I think psychologically City walk away from that game with the edge. And the reason for that is because when City take the lead, Arteta calls all those lads and goes, right, everybody on the pitch. Martinelli, Odegaard, blah, blah, blah. Saliba comes on at halftime. Partey starts the game. Like Zinchenko comes on. I think Tomiyasu is a better right back than Ben White. I'm quite surprised that that Ben White's been the first choice. But my point is that all their big guns go onto the pitch and they don't really create enough. And on the other side, City feel like the last 15 minutes of that game, they're pretty much in control. So, and I think that we can't forget that we will be at the Emirates, all the pressure will be on Arsenal.
Yeah.
No matter what we think about being behind, when it comes to the whistle to kick that game off, all the pressure will be on Arsenal. They're going to be at home. There's going to be an expectation from their crowd, from their supporters. But they're not playing kids. They're not playing a mug team. They're not playing a team who are City aren't Liverpool or Chelsea this season. City are still Man City. You've still got Rodri, Kevin De Bruyne, Gundo, Haaland, Mahrez in the form that he's in, Grealish getting better and better. I mean, it's not going to be easy for Arsenal. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And I think that I wouldn't be shocked if City won that game by a couple of goals. Like if that game finished 3-1 to City or 2-0 to City, I wouldn't go, wow, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I mean, like, I hope it's comfortable, but I just wouldn't be surprised if we just win. I just wouldn't, because I think you're right. I think everyone talks about the pressure being on City. There is pressure on City, of course there is, but the greater pressure, and I guess the more unique pressure, is definitely on Arsenal. It is. There's an expectation from their own fans, and there's a risk of them being a little naive, coming out, trying to blow Manchester City away, us weathering the storm, and ultimately just picking them off. The classic KDB, one burst, one cross, Haaland scores. Then after that, that's where they could get edgy. I know they played really well, but talking about coming back against United and whatever, it's not the same as coming back against Manchester City. It isn't. Like there was a greater fear of playing for Man City, and there's a greater mental toll of playing Man City than there is playing United right now. Because I know they were great to come back, but it's just true. City are a bigger deal than United these days. United fans will hate to hear that, but it's in the where we are. It's absolutely the game they're looking at. Great to win against United.
We've got the examples of the last 13, 14 months. The reality is that whilst Arsenal have been amazing, they've played City twice and they've lost both times so far. So no matter what you say about how good you are against the other teams, footballers are human beings. When Odegaard goes on that pitch, he'll be looking at Kevin De Bruyne and Rodri going, shit, I'm playing against those lads now. They've been the best in this league for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And so I feel as though, like I understand the frustration about letting Cancelo go. I understand the fact that is potentially a weakness in the squad. It'd be foolish for me to say otherwise. But at the same time, I don't think that it's fair to focus on something like that without also having the wider context of what your squad is.
Yeah.
We got the best number 9 in the world playing for Man City. I think Kevin De Bruyne is the best midfielder in the world. Even on bad form, he's the best midfielder in the world. And we got Kevin De Bruyne. I think Rodri's probably the best number 6 in the world. We've got him. I think Ederson is the best goalkeeper we could have for the way that we play. I still think Walker is probably one of the best right backs in the world.
Oh, yes.
I think you look at Diaz, Stones, Akanji, Laporte. Ake, that's a hell of a lot of options
Nah,
for
they're all
centre
quality.
back. So
People like to
so
dump on the quality. They're all quality.
exactly, when you move through the squad, right, you kind of go, I've got a slightly different view in that I look at the squad as a whole and I go, well, you know, if they don't win the league, it won't be for want of trying.
Riyad Mahrez is one of the best right wingers in the world, especially in his form right now
Exactly.
as well. He's flying. So, like, I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I do know that stranger things have happened, and I do know that Man City are too good to just to sink into the background. And maybe this Cancelo thing is the necessary evil. Maybe this shake-up is needed, and maybe anything that reasserts Guardiola's authority. Not that it needed to happen because he is the man still, but anything that really focuses the season. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. I want to see, by the way,
first 20 minutes against Spurs, you'll know how big the impact of Cancelo leaving has been, because I've the feeling, I could be wrong, but I've the feeling that first 20 we play with a personality that we've lacked a little bit in the last few weeks, and I think that personality will come from the lift that they all get from getting the dickhead who's ruining the party out of the room.
We need Ruben Diaz back on the pitch. That's my opinion. I just want someone who's there to bash heads together. And I know that's a very basic way of looking at it, but I want him a fucking leader.
What's going on with Diaz?
I honestly think it's just more a case of that he's just come back.
Thing,
I think he's just come back and he's taking him slowly. Guardiola can do that every now and then, but I think he's been more impressed with Ake, Stones, and Akanji than we realise. You know, like I think he's been like loving that. Like I think he's been.
I love Akanji. I'm in a minority. I know lads.
He gets so much criticism. Like he's a really good player. I just don't understand. I think it's maybe because someone always has to pick out the
I'm looking at Unibil.
Yeah,
if you're
like,
watching this.
Like,
I'm looking at Unibil. Yeah.
He's a good player. Like he's okay. Maybe he's not our best centre back, but I still think he's clearly a Champions League top level centre back. And like,
I mean, like
made a few mistakes here
I've
and there.
Heard people say
so does Laporte, you know, and
yeah. I've heard people say he can't pass. That's bollocks, right?
It literally is bollocks.
I've heard people say he can't defend. That's bollocks. On the contrary, one of the things I really like about him is that I think he's quite aggressive. I think he's gotten more aggressive as his time at City's gone on. I like the manner in which he defends in general. That's not to say he won't make a mistake every now and again, but everybody does.
The thing is, for me, is he he may not be the best in the air out of all the five. He may not be the best passer out of the five. He may not be the quick, the strongest, but he still can do all those things. You know, like, just because one isn't the best passer doesn't mean they're a terrible passer. Like there was no one at Manchester City who was a terrible
I think there's
passer.
a lot to be said. I think there's a lot to be said for 7 out of 10 consistency. I think that we have some players, João Cancelo, for example, who's either 9 out of 10 or 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
And there's fuck all in the middle. And that's no good. That's not sustainable. You need players where the baseline is 6 or 7. So when they have a bad day, it's never that bad. And I think that's the thing with Akanji and with Ake for me this season, is that they've shown a level of consistency, which is why they keep getting picked. And that level of consistency is that even if I'm not the best defender on the pitch, over 95 minutes, you're going to get 7 out of 10 out of me. And that's what you need.
Hunger and drive as well. Guardiola keeps going back to that. I think Diaz will be back on the pitch, by the way. I think he will be. And I think once he's back on the pitch, we'll realise what we missed. And maybe Diaz is seen as the least progressive passer. I don't know. Maybe it's that. And right now, maybe Guardiola...
There is an element of that.
Yeah, and I think right
there is
now,
an element of that.
Like, I think... Ake is, I would probably say Ake is the least progressive passer, but he's left-footed and he's playing wonderfully. And I think in general he suits that left side, and Diaz can't play that left side in that way. He can't do it in that way.
Yeah.
Laporte is the obvious goal there, but go on.
What else we've got, which I think is a really great thing for us now, is we've got a long week before the Spurs game. It's very rare in the middle of the season that Guardiola gets 7-8 days with the players on the training ground to work on tactics, to work on shape, to work on positioning, to work on everything, basically. Yeah. And then we've got another week after Spurs before Villa. So I think the fact that we've now got 2 full weeks, I'm actually quite excited by the idea that maybe we are in transition. And so we're on a journey where at the end of the journey, we'll be back to being a team that can accumulate 100 points over the course of the season. And I believe that we'll get there. So like this kind of little moment in the middle where we're trying to figure out exactly where everybody goes and how it's going to work. It's fun. I mean, you know, sometimes a change is as good as a rest. And I think certainly from a winning football team point of view, You've got to change it if you want to keep winning. And I'm excited by that. I'm excited by, you know, I know that I keep coming back to the Cancelo thing, but mate, I'm buzzing that Cancelo's been fucked off, because that means that Rico Lewis will get more opportunities. And if you'd have asked me 4 weeks ago, who would you prefer to play, João Cancelo or Rico Lewis? I'd said Rico Lewis every day of the week. Cancelo's an idiot. The guy is either 2 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. He's a luxury fullback. He's a guy who, you know, when your whole team is doing dead well and everything functions in the right way, then your left back can have a free role as a number 8 or a winger. But when you're learning and you need solidity and you need a kind of structure and you need players to do the right things, you can't rely on somebody like João Cancelo to do the right thing. That guy clearly is so selfish that he only thinks for himself and he only plays for himself. Fuck guys like that. Like, that's not, you're not going to get anywhere.
I ultimately agree. I mean, Cancelo, either way now, he's gone. So he's gone, and you're right. One thing I want to go back to is the idea that now we have loads of time in the training ground, and I think it's timed really well. There's a massive chance to clear the air, you know, and a few days away from it, it's over. He's done. I think he's probably been out of the dressing room now for 2-3 days, probably more than we realise. Probably last time he was in training was probably last week, you know, probably was, and like he's probably gone now, and it's all sorted. So we've got a little bit of time. We've only got about 5 minutes left. So Amar with the super chat said, "Your thoughts on the hypocrisy around Chelsea spending versus City? Seems like it's fine for some to spend shitloads and not others." And I saw Simon J praising yesterday. I presume that's Simon Jordan, which brings me to a comment I saw on Twitter earlier, which I remember. On their own, Chelsea have spent more than League One, Bundesliga, La Liga, Serie A, and the Championship put together. What do you feel about the hypocrisy surrounding it with Chelsea and City? Because we briefly touched on this, didn't we, before the video started, me and you? But it's mental. It's mental money.
It is.
And it has been treated differently, I would argue.
It has. I don't have a problem with a football club spending its owners' money on footballers. I'm old-fashioned. I believe that football clubs should never generate profits, because anything you generate as a profit should go straight back into the team. And top clubs, they should have owners who are prepared to invest to build winning teams. So morally, I have no issue with Chelsea spending. Anybody who watches these videos and listens to my podcast knows how I feel about the British football writing fraternity, or certainly certain sections of it. And those fellas are rampant hypocrites. But the problem is that in the social media age, you got nowhere to hide, Matt Law. When you take shots at City about FFP, about
People
spending money, and then 2 years later, stroking yourself because you're so excited by the money that Chelsea have spent, people are going to point that out. And, you know, the general toxicity around social media, the general thing about football Twitter, we need more responsible adults in that space. And unfortunately, a lot of football writers act like 12-year-old dickheads when it comes to their own teams and rival teams. So you'll have Scouse writers and Chelsea writers and United writers chatting shit about City regularly when City spend money.
They think they're any different to us. They are not, and I mean that. I mean, we're football fans, and we admit it. That's the difference. We're City fans, and at least we can admit that every now and then we may step into bias, but at least we're not pretending to be impartial. You know, that's the difference.
No, and that's the thing. Like, they don't really. I don't think they're asked. Like, genuinely, I think that most football writers think that they're above supporters. They think that they do. They think that they're above us, and so they're not asked. They're like, I don't care what a City fan thinks. But ultimately, that's why supporter media has grown in the manner that it's grown, because a lot of club supporters feel like there is not a lot out there in the mainstream media, and that comes from this kind of hypocrisy around, you know, when certain clubs spend it. Can you imagine? Let's put City out of the equation. Can you imagine if Newcastle had spent 600 million in 8 months? Do you know what I mean?
There'd
be a parliamentary inquiry.
I was say that it'd be government. You're right. It would be.
There'd be a parliamentary inquiry. Right. The likes of Bory Smith, right, would have placards stood outside St James's Park going, this is evil, this is bad for football. There'd be editorials written left, right, and centre. It's just, it speaks.
You're not really exaggerating, because I agree. They would literally be raising it.
They'd have lost.
There'd be a petition. It'd be up in Parliament. I guarantee it'd be a debate. We'd see clips from Question Times coming out, and someone would have mentioned it. Some fucking gobshite MP would have mentioned it somewhere at some point. And you're right.
Totally.
It absolutely would happen. Guaranteed you. And like,
and you know,
the silence is.
Can I have another little rant?
Of course you can. Go for
Very
it.
quickly. I have another little rant, right? So it's like I see a lot of football writers these days, British ones, by the way, right? English ones, talking about, ooh, like the imbalance between like the Premier League and Europe, it's terrible. Oh, like, you know, look at how much money the Premier League spends in comparison to La Liga. And it's like, wow,
Pays their wages.
do your homework, understand why does the Premier League generate so much money? Collective bargaining. What's that? Well, when it was invented, the Premier League back in the beginning of the 90s, when cable television came to top level football in England, the Premier League decided they'd collectively sell their TV rights. Whereas in Spain, Real Madrid and Barcelona went, no, we're the big clubs. We'll sell our own TV rights. So the disparity between the haves and the have-nots within their own league became huge, which meant that the league as a product was just less interesting for people watching because you've not got 10, 12 teams who are similarly resourced. You've got 18 teams with no money and 2 teams with all the money.
King propping one of them up as well, an actual king. You know
Exactly.
What I mean? Like, it's not even remotely fair. And also, by the way, one of the things is like, it's funny for them to sit there and they write all these pieces, but they are literally little fucking parasites leeching off this massive Premier League machine anyway. They're living.
Of course they are.
And Joe, there's nothing wrong with that, but the fact that they're above it or they're aware of it, it's not them, the money they make, and the fact that the Athletic, for example, and there's nothing, once again, write for who you want to, but the fact that exists as a subscription base is because the Premier League is so big in the first place and they can afford to do it. It wouldn't
The
happen
Athletic
without it.
is the Athletic is the journalism equivalent of Sheikh Mansour buying Manchester City Football Club, right? So the Athletic basically came to England, doubled everybody's wages, went around, got all the best writers, went, I'm going to treble your wages, come and work for me.
They can do it, but don't pretend.
And they lose money. They're losing money every year because eventually they'll have a monopoly, right?
Yeah.
But it's exactly, more or less, that's exactly speculate to accumulate. That's business. What happens in most businesses, it's happening in football media. But when it happens at a football club, it depends upon who's doing the buying and the selling. The kind of the reaction to it and whether it's acceptable or not depends upon who's doing the buying and the selling. So, in short, who cares what they say?
Exactly. And I do think this probably, if it's a good thing, maybe the reaction to all that and people seeing through it is that people like myself and you, we get to talk about football because people realise actually we speak from the heart and we actually care. And for one, we're not trying to pull the wool over people's eyes and pretend to do anything that we're not. We're aware of who we are, and I think there's an honesty and truth that comes from just being football fans. And to be honest as well, these days we're just as clued up as a lot of these journalists are. In fact, we are. I know we are, and that's the crazy thing about it. And we often all hear things more about about Manchester City or our club, whatever, because we're obsessed with it and we actually pay attention. So to me, that's the value, and that's why, of course, 9320 podcast. Go and check it out. Ahsan, I did put it in the tweet and maybe even the thumbnail, so I feel like I should touch on it for 5 minutes before we go. James Maddison links. I know you're not a fan, but what do you think about the for him as a player? And the
I've got to go. I feel sick, mate. I might be sick. I'm gonna have to go.
No, go on. What do you make of? If you don't want to talk about Maddison as a player, if you're not a fan, what do you think about the link? You know, the general mood of the link. What does that tell us?
I think what happened yesterday is that City read the mood music around letting Cancelo go, not signing a left back. I think a lot of agents read the mood music around that. I think that stories dropped last night about, City are interested in X, Y, Z for the summer. I don't think James Maddison is good enough to play for Manchester City. I don't think James Maddison is as good as Jack Grealish, and I'm not totally convinced that Jack Grealish is good enough to play for Man City, even now, after 18 months. I think Phil Foden is probably 100 times the player that James Maddison is. James Maddison is injury-prone. Can somebody give me one actual, factual, good reason, other than money laundering, why City would want to sign James
scores
Maddison.
a lot and assists a lot. That's the thing. That's what I've seen thrown back at me from my opinions. My opinion about James Maddison, he's a good player, and I feel
there's loads of players. There's tons of players in the Premier League that can score an assist. Doesn't make them good enough to play for City. There's a difference between being I'm good at Leicester and I'm good at Man City. Do you know what I mean?
That's my issue with it. I think we're forgetting. I think people are forgetting just how good Man City's midfielders are. And my argument has always been that Manchester City, what makes Man City or a Pep team is a world class midfield. And if Maddison was coming in and we had David Silva still in his pomp and KDB was 3 years younger and Gundogan was there and we had Ferner and Rodri settled and we're like, okay, he's coming as backup to learn from these greats. So be it. My issue is the timing of this idea. Maddison, to me, we control games. Like, as much as people talk about and moan about Bernardo's form and Gundogan, still, when they're on form, no one touches that midfield. No one does.
No.
Manchester City
when they're
midfield,
not on form, nobody touches them. No. They're that good. My head would fall off if anybody at Man City thinks that it's a good idea to bring James Maddison in to replace Gundo or Bernardo Silva. I will say it now. I'll hand my supportership in, man.
See, I don't feel quite as strongly as that, but my issue is mainly he doesn't maintain that standard potentially right now.
I don't think,
and people can talk about creating chances and scoring goals, but playing for Leicester is a fucking piece of piss. And Leicester fans couldn't get it yesterday replying to me. It's just not the same because one, you do not get as much spaces. Those through balls into the channels do not exist because everyone's got 11 people behind the ball. And I feel like he could be all right, I don't know, but he's not De Bruyne and he's not Bernardo and he's not Gundogan, and I don't think he can be. Maybe I'm wrong there, and maybe people will say we're talking nonsense, but I feel like the demands, like people go, well, why are you so relaxed about left back then? Because I mentioned Esteemed from Brighton, because left back is not as important as midfield for Man City. It just isn't. Get a left back. Delph's proved it. Zinchenko's proved it. And do you know why it didn't matter? Because we had a world class midfield. If you've got a world class midfield, you can get away with a dodgy left back or whatever.
And it's the root of Pep's team. The root of any Guardiola team is the midfield. Right? Bernardo Silva, Ilkay Gundogan, Kevin De Bruyne, Rodri, on a bad day, on a terrible day, live in a different universe to your James Maddisons. And if Phil Foden and Jack Grealish can't get a spot in midfield in this Man City team, go on then. I dare somebody to try and convince me that James Maddison will get a spot in our midfield.
Nico said, you signed Calvin Phillips, by the way. But that proves my point. We had Rodri already. So,
he's a backup for Rodri. And my man might even get yarded in the summer if he doesn't sort his neck out. Do you know what I mean?
I saw your comments, Nico, at the start of the video talking about why we got rid of Romeo Lavia for Calvin Phillips. You might have answered your own question there. Phillips might go. We might bring Lavia back. So, Phillips is a
straight swap for Phillips.
You send Phillips to
Southampton, you bring Lavia back.
He could be. I don't know. I can't see the future. He could be that. He could improve massively, but he's injury prone. And Red Dragon has just pointed out, KDB was a Bundesliga Player of the Year. Gundogan was a Champions League finalist and a league winner. And Bernardo was part of a league-winning Monaco side who absolutely tore Man City to pieces in the Champions League. I remember all those things.
The levels are so different.
They have to be, in my opinion. And people say maybe Bellingham isn't quite that level, but he's 19 years old and playing in the Champions League. To me,
no, Jude Bellingham is a special footballer.
I agree.
He's
what he's
of
done
that
at
level.
that age is special. I agree.
He's really at that level.
And to me, I don't know.
I would love for us to sign Bellingham. I've got no concrete feeling that we'll definitely do it or definitely won't do it. But Bellingham's good enough to play for City. There's no question about that. And there's very few players out there that you look at them. In that age bracket, there's none other than Gabby and Pedri that you look at and you go, he's good enough to play in City's midfield now. Bellingham is. Maddison isn't.
That's our opinion, guys. We could be talking nonsense. Who knows? Your opinion is just as important. Don't forget. Do let me know down in the comments what you make of this whole video. But anyway, whatever it will be, KSRR and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a very, very interesting summer. Guys, I've been posting... Yeah, go on.
If you talk to anybody at City today, just say James Maddison no. Just say.
I don't think City TV will particularly have any influence there. But I'm actually off to the Etihad now to do some filming about nothing to do with transfers, unfortunately. Just general filming, which I'm sure you guys will see eventually. Guys, once again, check out Ahsan and the guys 9320 Pod. I've been putting links in the comments. It's a wonderful place, and as you can see, Ahsan's a passionate guy. He has his takes, but it's always good fun, and I'm sure it'd be perfect for the commute or whatever, or on the way to school, college, work, whatever, or when you're doing the dishes. That's how I listen to podcasts, by the way, doing the dishes. That's my thing. So I don't go anywhere anymore because I've got a child. But in general, go and check it out. It's wonderful. And as I said, once again, thank you very much, mate. Been massively appreciated. appreciated.
Pleasure.
Guys, have a lovely day. Ahsan, have a lovely day. Up the Blues.
You too.
We are still alive here, as always. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.